Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. On this session today, I have with me a very special guest. And if you are on Medium, it's impossible that you haven't heard her name. She writes this amazingly insightful pieces that sort of, glue you to the screen and you can't take your eyes off because they are so well written and you have to read them till the end. And her research-based articles are so compelling. A lot of her articles have actually forced me to make some changes in my life. And today, in this session, we are going to talk with her and we are going to discuss what it takes to write such amazing articles. And her name is May Pang. And I'm so happy to welcome May to this chat. Hi, May.
Hey, hi, Anangsha. That was
So
a
happy
good
to be
pronunciation of my
chatting.
name.
Yeah, that's so happy to be chatting with you today.
Yeah, you too. It's really nice to meet all these people, like when you actually meet them in real life. Oh, well, in digital real life. Yes.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me.
absolutely. Yeah. So I just wanted to ask you, like, before we talk about Medium, I just wanted to ask you about your writing journey. Like, were you always a writer? When did you start writing? How did your writing evolve over time, etc.?
It's so funny. I read your bio and a lot of other writers, and everyone's like, "Oh, we've been writing since I was 6," and that's that's not me. I've been reading for a long time. I've always had this great love affair with words. So I love writing, reading in different languages. Thinking about words. And I used to be a public speaker a lot. I did a lot of debating and public speaking, but writing was never a very natural form of expression for me. So I used to play music a lot more. And then as I got older in my early adult, ages, I was doing a lot more physical sports or recreation as my form of expression. So writing is actually really new to me as a something as a medium of communication, I guess. So yeah.
So, like, did you, before you joined Medium, did you write, or was Medium the first time you started writing?
I would say medium was the first time I started writing.
That's amazing. So, how long has it been for you on Medium?
It's actually been relatively new. So I started taking it seriously October of last year. So October
Oh,
2020. Yeah, I know. Everybody's very surprised. I had a few big hits and I had, I have a lot of followers compared to the time I've been on Medium. But I also actually, the first article I wrote was probably early 2019. And I got really lucky super early on, and I had like these big viral hits, and I just went, oh, okay, and then I left it and I didn't write anymore. I don't know why I did that, but so the first article ever was probably 2019, but then I didn't write for about a year, and then I started again in October of 2020. So and semi consistently, I guess, since then.
so like it has been a few months, like since October. So would you say
Mhm.
that in that time, has your writing changed from how it used to be before?
I think so. Yeah, I think it would definitely. I play around with sort of experimenting a lot with my, what I want to write about and my voice. And I sometimes take the same sort of overall theme, story, and I switch the writing style to see what works. And so I published two different articles, but it's about the same thing. Um, and I would say the biggest change is really clarifying to myself, what I want the reader to feel when I'm writing. So I used to just write and then ask my friends what they thought. But now I think when I write, I have a feeling that I want the reader to take away in mind. So I want them to feel like when you read my writing, it's like you're having a conversation with a great friend, like you're in a living room with somebody and you're having this conversation. And that every character, every story that's in the writing is somebody you can see in your real life. So it doesn't matter if you're in India like you are, or you're somebody who's in the UK or in France or whatever. You can see, oh, these are very human things that I can understand and feel as well. So that's been a journey from the beginning to now.
I think that's amazing because what you said, like you try to make it engaging And I would say it definitely works because whenever I read your stories, I feel like going in that binge reading mode because I can't just stop at one. They are so well written. I just feel I have to read more because literally every story is that amazing. And I'm honestly a big fan of the way you put your thoughts.
That's awesome. I mean, that's really high praise coming from you because I love your writing as well. It's very different to mine, but it's really so, your thoughts are so clear and it's so structured and everything just unfolds in this really neat and beautiful way. So
Thank you so much. I'm so happy that you think that way. So, I'd like to ask you, how do you pick the topics that you write on the platform? Like what topics, and not just the ideas, but the broad topics.
whenever it comes to me in the shower when I'm running. No, I'm sure like a lot of people say that, right? It's like so I think a lot of the times the ideas come from the people in my life or what's happening in my life. Like maybe not the exact thing, but if a friend calls me up and they're talking to me, or if a reader wrote to me something specific that's happening in their life, like people who are struggling to date in the pandemic or people who get ghosted all the time, and I draw upon those stories to write. So a lot of the ideas do come from what's happening day to day in my own life. Not necessarily about me, but, things I read about yeah. So very, very in the moment type thing. I don't plan the titles, a month ahead kind of thing. So yeah.
I sort of get that because the same is with me. I think inspiration can be found anywhere. Even a small
Exactly.
conversation can turn into a story, right? I think that's what makes us writers different from other people because we are always on the lookout for stories.
Yeah. Yeah, every writer goes to bed with like 10 headlines and then they wake up and they're like, oh no, I gotta write all that down. But I think a
Exactly.
lot
I
of
mean,
it is what people are experiencing day to day, what I
yeah,
hear from readers and my friends about what they're feeling and what's going on.
yeah. So you said that you had a viral hit when you just started. So was it in a similar topic, similar niche that you write currently, like advice or love, or was it something else?
It was so it was for Better Humans, the publication. And I actually had two viral hits back to back. So number 5 was about cold showers. But in a really different way. So it was called the Unquantifiable Benefits of Cold Showers. So it's about how you feel when you do it. It's not about so much about the science of it, even though it's presented there. But in the article is all about, I don't agree with the science, even as a scientist, I don't think it's strong. But this is how I feel when I have cold showers. And that one was like number 3 on all of Medium. And then my 6th article was about connection. And that was about how to create intimacy with any person you meet. And that one was even like bigger than the first one. And that went to like number 2 on Medium. So they are related, but not really. I guess it's not a particular topic. The connection one is. But the style of writing is very similar. It's like, how do I make you feel something? So like when you read the cold showers one, you're like, oh, I want to feel that too. So it's making you want to feel something. And with the connection one, it is very much like, let's leave you with an emotion when you leave the story. So I think, yes, similar style. But yeah, the cold showers is like way left field in terms of niche. I haven't written anything else like that again.
Yeah, intimacy one was also for Better Humans.
Yes. Yep.
Mhm. You read a lot for Better Humans, right? I've read a lot of your articles there, and they're so well detailed, and they have all those cute little comics in them that actually put the point across. Like it feels better. It makes the article more friendly.
Yeah. I have written a lot for Better Humans, and I love their style and their mission, and everything that Tony and Terry are all about. I love how they bring out so many different topics about so many different things. Really feel like it's about being like a better human, like
Yeah.
in terms of fitting in community, in society as well. But I also write, like now I'm writing a lot more for other publications as well. But I started, Better Humans was the first publication that kind of gave me the break, you know, like the first one I applied to and the first one that I got accepted to. So it was very exciting, like just to.
That's so amazing because like so many writers struggle to get into Better Humans, and your first article on Medium was with them. Must have been like a very huge
I know.
achievement.
I remember that day so well. I was like, "Oh my god!" But I think I got really lucky pretty early on. You know, like my first article was curated, and first all my articles up to I think like my seventh article was they were all curated, and I've never had rejection from Better Humans. So it's like, but I think once you're in as a writer, they work with you to make your piece.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think, yeah, but that was really lucky. And I still think to this day that I'm really grateful to Terry, the editor of Better Humans, for like giving me that little confidence boost that I needed, you know?
So, like, since 2019, how many articles have you written for Better Humans? Have you kept count?
No, I want to say five.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think about five or six.
Okay.
Yeah, and I do want to write more for Better Humans. It's just my pieces for Better Humans take like a week to like let craft and put together. It's because you know, they have a very, as you know, they have a very specific style, but also I just like that it's more, I like bringing in a lot more research when it comes to Better Humans articles. So it takes a while to kind of write them as well. But yeah, I think I'm going to I continue writing for them for sure.
Agreed. Even for me, it takes me like 4 or 5 days to write, and then to if I have images to create the images, it takes even longer than that. But I would say it's definitely worth the effort because writing for Better Humans has made me a better writer because they are so
Yeah.
strict with their guidelines.
Yeah, I still go back to your what about the questions, the annual review questions. That was such a well written. I still go back to that article and go, oh, yeah, those questions. I'm going to keep asking the questions.
You know, like you did an interview with Terry about what it
Yes.
takes to be a Better Humans writer. Whenever
Yeah.
I write an article, more than the Better Humans guidelines, I actually go to your article, your
Oh,
interview with her, because
I've had a few people say that. Yeah.
yeah, because it's so helpful and it is so detailed and the way Terry has cleared all the doubts, I think it's even more helpful than their guidelines. Maybe they should put it there on the publication.
Yeah, it's I think it's really important for us to get to know editors as human beings, you know. It's like at the end
Yeah.
of the day, there's some person there that's making a decision and you know, they're gonna have their own biases and their own preferences and you know, things like that. So yeah, but I really enjoy Terry as a person. Like I love her. Writing is so unique and so just, you know, she's such a crazy human being, like an interesting being. So yeah.
That's amazing. We have a question from the audience. It says that once you decide to write a particular article, do you finish it in one go and edit before posting, or do you take 3 or 4 days before posting?
Oh, I definitely take 3 or 4 days before posting. Like it takes me I usually have the first draft is like this whole like blah, like I just put it out on paper. Like they call it like the vomit draft or something. You know, you just like everything comes out and you kind of see how it fits, and you just get all your kind of the main structure on top. Like if you're a sculptor, you take like a lump of clay and you kind of make the right shapes, and then you start you know like cutting some stuff away and then refining it and making the features come out more, and then at the end sort of making it stand out more. But I almost never finish and publish an article in a day. I'm very slow as a writer, perhaps because unlike you, I haven't been writing all my life, you know, so it takes a while for me to put something together, then I leave it, and then I come back and edit, and then I probably leave it again. It usually takes about 3 days, yeah.
Yeah, it's same for me. Like at least for Better Humans, long time. Even for other publications, say Mind Cafe or
I agree.
PSLW, it
Yeah.
takes maybe I write an article in say 2 or 3 hours, and then I let it be for a day. I come back and edit it later in the on the next day, and then sometimes I ask for feedback, and then I publish it finally. So it
Yeah.
definitely takes more than one day. I can't write and publish on the same day. It's not possible.
I know talk to all these writers who do it like twice a day or like, you know, I think Jordan, who you also interviewed, was saying that he sort of can write an article in 2 hours. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, you know, it's just, but, you know, he's also been doing it for a long time and he's a really good writer. But I think there's no real, I think whatever works for each person is,
Yeah.
there's not like a format. But I do find that when I let it sit for a while, somewhere in the back of my mind I have things to add, or like quotes, or like, something comes forward again. And when you reread it, as you know, and actually like the second day, it reads a little bit differently. So it's to like, yeah, to create and edit at a different time, a different day, I think.
Yeah, the longer I think you wait between writing and editing, the more benefit you get from the editing rounds. I feel that. I have
Yeah, I
experienced
guess that's
that
true.
actually.
That's true. But I would never leave it for like a week, because then it's like whatever I was trying to convey is kind of like not, the feeling isn't there. I feel like when I write, it's such an emotional experience. It's like I need to, like, if I want my audience to connect with me emotionally, I also need to connect with myself emotionally when I write. So like you can't pour it out on paper otherwise.
Yeah,
So I think that's the other reason it's good to like come back to it, to like to see.
yeah, we have another question from the audience, and it's asking that, hello, apart from Medium, which platforms do you publish on?
Oh, okay. I don't actually publish. Oh, I publish a Newsbreak as well, but that's a fairly new thing. And I don't. I will confess that I don't really understand that platform. And I guess even Medium, like we understand the rules of how to play, but how to be successful is still like always. But I do publish on, and I just started a Substack newsletter. Um, and again, that's something different. It's much more conversational, and it's much more like receiving an email from a friend. It's not so much like a polished article, but it's like sharing quotes or stories or just checking in. So yeah, Newsbreak, Medium, and Substack.
I'll definitely add all those links in the description for whoever wants to check out your work.
That'd be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, so another question is, I think most new writers on Medium have this question. So, do you think only a specific topic or a few specific topics work on Medium, or can a writer write about literally anything they wish to?
I think the topic maybe is less relevant than creating the value. So I think that if you wanted a fast track to succeed, I think niching down is easier. It makes it so if you always write about relationships, people who are interested in that will always engage every piece that you write. But having said that, I also think you can definitely be successful writing about a lot of things. So, Sean Kernan is one, like he's so interesting, and his ideas are always like different. Every article is different. And even you, I think, and actually you write about very different things. You write about books, you write about like personal development, also about love, so it's like there's a lot of, and there's a love story coming soon. There's a lot of different, styles that you can kind of write on, as long as you kind of have a voice that's powerful. So I wouldn't say you should write about whatever you want, because I think writing about whatever you want isn't whatever anyone wants to read. So I think you can break it down into a bunch of different topics, as long as it's all still providing value to the reader. So not necessarily because you want to write it. I don't think you'll be successful if you just write what you want to write. There's like a happy medium there. So, but I do think niching down is quicker and more successful. So like for me, I don't always write about the same topics, but there's an overarching theme. So that one about feeling like it's very conversational and very emotional, but also about connection. So it can be about relationships, it can be about, parents, or it can be about memory, but it's either a connection with yourself or connection with others. And that's kind of like a theme that flows through all the articles. So yeah, I think niching for quicker success, but possible to do multiple topics as long as you have value and some kind of connecting voice.
Totally agree on that, because just like you said, I write about a lot of topics, but most of them have this common theme of how you can be a better version of who you are
Yourself,
currently.
yeah,
So yeah, it's like a
absolutely.
personal development theme is there, and no matter what topic you write, there has to be some takeaway for the reader. Like
Right,
even if I'm writing about a book, I always try to make sure that people who haven't read the book, they have something to take away from this article. I
right.
think that matters a lot, right? Like when or whichever
Mhm.
platform you're writing, you should always keep the reader in mind.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I see that in your writing as well, both the connecting theme even through multiple topics, but also the really clear takeaways from, what the article is all about. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's like, I think it's very important writing for the reader.
Yeah, right. So that piece that I told you about, the one that went viral, actually, the one about how to instantly create intimacy with anyone you meet. Right. So I actually wrote the first piece I wrote, the first idea I had was just to talk about this experiment that I had with Lyft drivers, where I tried to have this really intimate conversation with every Lyft driver. And that piece was called The Secret Life of Lyft Drivers. And it was all about me. It was like, this is what I experienced, why I wanted to do it, blah, 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 blah. And I sent it to all my friends. They loved it. And your friends are always going to love it because they love you. So they're
Yeah.
with you. They're not connecting with the writing, but they're like, oh, this is telling me more about May, whom I already love her, So everybody thought it was great. And I published it. It got curated and it was flat. It was, and I was like, oh, I think it's a good story, right? So I rewrote the whole thing. And that was when I made it about the reader. So everything was completely flipped. It was like, what do you think about connection in your life, and here's what you can do, and here's how you will feel when you do this. And that was the one that it went from 2,000 reads to like 250,000 reads, so it's like insane, like it's a different scale completely, right? So I think that's really the power of understanding what people actually want. Like, I'm still writing about what I wanted to write about, but it's completely flipped in terms of framing.
Yeah, I actually haven't read that article about creating intimacy, but I watched your talk on momentum. I think
Yeah.
it was similar. Like initially you told the story, then you broke it down into how the people who are watching, they can apply it in their life. I
Yeah.
think that's a really good way of presenting information, right? Story plus actionable takeaways so that people can relate to the article better.
Yeah, exactly. And so but that's completely different from the first story where I wrote whatever I wanted to write. It was just like May's life, and nobody cares. So,
Exactly. So, just a different question. How does your writing process look like?
when I saw that question, I was like, oh no. So I would say I don't really have a very strict process. A lot of what I'm trying to do now is to learn to love the process of writing, to enjoy it, because I haven't had this practice or this natural, like what you have and a lot of other writers have, it just always came out easily. It's never been that for me. So what my process looks like now is I try to set aside some time. And there's a handy trick, I think, tip from Neil Gaiman. He said, set aside some time, and whether you write or not, you cannot do anything else. So I try to just kind of sit there and I read in the morning, and I usually try to prime my brain somehow by either reading, which I do a lot of, or just like free form writing, which is just whatever comes to your mind. So it's a different kind of journaling. Or I do a workout before, but something to kind of feel a little bit inspired about life. And then I sit down and I write, and then, I leave that time. And then I do a lot of the editing and responding to emails at night sometimes. But that's kind of the process. It's mostly about trying to get into that space where I really enjoy the writing. And people use the word flow, but beyond just flowing, I want to have pleasure when I write. I want to feel pleasure, and I think that's really important if I'm trying to give that same emotion back to the readers. So yeah, no strict process, just a little bit of time, a little bit of mental space, and some priming. So
Yeah, it definitely works. The flow that you give to the reader, it definitely works because, like I
thank
said,
you.
your
It's like
articles are so engaging. So it definitely works. Yeah.
somebody said to me, he's like, I had another reader interview me the other day, and he was like, do you feel like you must write so easily because it just flows so easily? I'm like, no. It takes a lot of preparation for my mind to get to that space.
Writing is always hard work. Any kind of writing it's
Right.
never easy, right? And it
And
has so many layers. like what you see is not what we initially wrote. It went through
Exactly.
lots
Yeah.
of rounds of polishing.
Yeah, and it takes a life of its own once you start sometimes, and it goes a different
Mm.
direction that you wanted it to go. So it's definitely. But the other thing for new readers, new writers, I think is really important, and I know that all of my peers and probably you struggle with is resting, because creative rest, your mind resting, is different from sleeping rest, from physical rest.
Definitely.
When you start writing, you just want to keep writing, and you feel so much pressure to keep writing. So, or like when you make that decision in your mind that I want to start taking games seriously or writing seriously, you go through all these rounds in your head about like, oh, I must write, and your mind is consumed by it. I think learning how to rest is a really important part of the process, to say, no, it's okay if I don't want to think about anything to do with writing today, and to give that mental rest, so yeah.
I think that's so important because, like, recently only after we had a conversation on Facebook, I started taking awareness of that on Saturdays and Sundays I won't write anything. I would just not even think about writing. I would do something completely different because, like you said, rest is so important.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like sometimes a lot of writing involves, I want to say, like listening to the universe, and like I don't think they're gods talking to me or anything, but I think he's just paying attention, like being in tune with what's happening in the world and picking up on things, and you can't do that when your mind is already full. It's like,
Yeah, that's very true. When you have space to receive, only then you will be able to get all the interesting signs that the universe sends you. That's
yeah,
great.
exactly.
Well, actually, when I asked you about the writing process, I meant that, like, how do you add the research? Do you first write the first draft and then you add the research, or do you write and research at the same time, or do you research beforehand, outline beforehand, and then write?
You're breaking up a little bit. Your voice is very soft. I don't know if it's the same for everyone else, but I heard the first part about writing research, and then so I am actually a geneticist by training. I work as an engineer now, but I used to be a geneticist, and I read a lot of stuff, even like science-based stuff and everything, everything to do with psychology or neurology, or I really just quite love science, actually. So I read a lot of nonfiction, and the research is mostly already in my brain. I just put it like the related research. So I usually have the idea and the research that backs it up. I just then go and take the actual link to verify, like, which book it's from, but I already know which part of that research goes into my story. So I guess that's the thing about like writing. I'm not a very practiced writer, but I have spent a lot of time reading, and I think that's the investment in part of being the writer. So, but yeah, it happens concurrently, except for the actual links to. Well, I'll go back and add the links after. But I
You
very
know, like,
have an idea and then look for the research afterwards to back it up.
I've asked this question to a lot of people, and I think you are the only person who has answered something that's similar to mine because this is true for me too. When I write something, I already know what research I'm going to put, but I don't know what book it is from or who did it. I just remember I read it somewhere, and then later on, I just write the first draft. Later on, I look for the exact research, and then only I add it in the article.
Yeah.
So I think this is something that we share in common.
Yeah, it's funny, when I was interviewing Terry, she said that she picked up on that too, and she hates it when writers just write and then they go, and research shows this, and it's not connected to I mean, it is, but it's also like very clear that it didn't like weave into it really easily. It's just like, all right, like put some research on and like tack it on. So, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. So, like about publications, if someone is starting, so first of all, do you prefer sticking with a few publications, or do you prefer experimenting and publishing with many different publications?
So my thing in life has always been building relationships. So I think it's my style personally is to build good relationships with a few publications, really understand what they want and really work with them, to when you can improve your style, but also to give them what they want. So I work with, it's more than two, but I guess Better Humans, PS I Love You, Mind Cafe, like those are the ones that and maybe The Ascent, although I'm not really sure if I'm writing so much about personal development, so maybe it doesn't fit. But yeah, just a few, I would say. Maybe not exactly one or two, but, a handful, no more than five. Like, think about them as your close friends. If you can't maintain a good relationship with them, it's probably not worth doing. But I would say that a lot of other people have had success publishing across a bunch of different publications. And maybe when you start, because you don't know which one's going to be the best fit and which one you like working with the most, my recommendation to brand new writers is write widely. And then, that's what I did as well. I submitted to quite a few different publications in the beginning. And then I observe what their style is and what they want and what the editors came back with. And if it wasn't a fit for my writing, then I would just maintain the views. So start big and then narrow down. I think that's what you did too, right? Like you have.
Exact same thing. I am the writer for, I think, 15 plus publications.
Right, exactly. Me too, yeah.
But currently, I write with like Mind Cafe, Better Humans, and my own publication, Dusara Superpower. Sometimes I write for PS I Love You, but not quite often. So,
Right.
that's why, like, this year I'm thinking of focusing mostly on this three: Mind Cafe, Better Humans, and Dusara Superpower. So maybe only three.
Yeah, and I think that's important. Like once you feel like these people are your fit, like these publications are your fit, and remembering that there are people behind this that have their own vision for where the publication is going to go. And it's about whether your writing is quality or not. It's just, is it a good fit to their audience? And so once you find it, I think then the next step is to like start building and building on it.
Yeah, that's very true. So, whenever we talk about medium, it's impossible to not talk about money. And recently, I saw one of your comments on a Facebook group about how your story in PS I Love You made like more than $4,000.
Yeah.
So, like, what would you say, like somebody who's starting on the platform, what tips would you give them to make more money on Medium?
I think if we know that answer, I think everyone would make a lot of money. I will be the first to admit that I cannot tell which piece is going to go viral, and anyone who tells you that they can is lying. Like, I really don't think that that's something you can absolutely know for sure. But again, so I think that there are a few things that you can observe, so I would watch some of the bigger writers, but for example, I was resisting listicles for a long time. I thought it was a very, not creative, not inspiring form of writing, but listicles work. Okay, so I like to read listicles. I would say a lot of times when we start as writers, we want to be very, very different. We're like, oh, we want to be like super different. But, people like simplicity. So people like stories that are, some of the pieces that I did that actually went really well, the one that you saw that made like $44,400 or whatever, that was very simple. It was a story, So I think always keep in mind the reader. Don't be afraid to write things, like headlines that you think are a little like listicles or, a little maybe on the border of clickbaiting, not clickbait, but like something that, could be a little bit more enticing for somebody. There are certain topics that do well. How to be charming, how to be unforgettable, how to have people like you, how to be emotionally intelligent, So those are the themes that consistently do well. It doesn't mean you will do well, but, if you play on some of those topics, how to make money, that always does well. This is the question you're asking me. I think there are a few topics that people really are drawn to, and no matter how many people write about it, people still make money on it. So those are the ones that if you really were focused on money, that would be some of the things I would think to do. And those are within my sphere of understanding, because only the things that I look for. I think books are really powerful. That's, as you know, I think a lot of your book pieces did super well. So people like to know about interesting books. But I would say the most important thing as a writer, personally, if I could give a piece of advice, I know that's not the question you were asking, is to disconnect from the idea of making money on Medium. You know, I think it stifles your creativity. Um, and I have been really lucky, but I know it's unusual, apparently, to make that kind of money early. So I think that's luck, I will say. I've had a few pieces go viral, but I still, like I said, I still think it's luck. You know, I don't know for sure which one is going to take off. And I think if you focus on that, it's really, you will just be so drained all the time, wondering about what happened, you know, like, why doesn't this work? It was such a great thing. Everybody loved it, you know. So my advice is to emotionally disconnect from money. But obviously, as we write, we still want to focus on the reader and the feedback that we get based on their views and the money that we earn. We should use that information, use the data, but just emotionally disconnect. So use your rational brain to look at the data and look at the money. And again, all those topics that I just mentioned, plus, you know, listicles, plus keeping it really simple works. And research works. Backing things up with little bits of research really work. And quotes. My most highlighted anything is always quotes, right? And emotional, kind of like any emotional introduction and emotional ending has been very strong. A lot of times people like, I have people who remember the beginnings and endings of my stories like months later, and they're like, oh, I remember this piece, and they can quote back the intro and the ending to me, and I'm just like, wow, that's pretty good. So I think those kinds of things make it more like make people keep coming back, and that's really what you want, like repeat customers from your pieces.
Right.
So, but yeah, I think super important to emotionally disconnect from that. Like, I still have pieces that I think might do well, but I'm not upset if it doesn't, I guess. So yeah.
I think when you emotionally disconnect, it helps you even if the piece succeeds or goes really viral because you're
Yeah.
not so attached with it. You are not so, consumed by the idea of replicating it. And then you can
Exactly.
write more. You can experiment more because if you constantly keep trying to write an article that makes $1,000, you won't be able to write because you will always have that idea in your head that maybe this is not good enough and maybe I shouldn't publish it yet.
Exactly. And it'll go round and round, and then if it fails, you know, you're just like, why did it fail? You know, what did I do wrong? And sometimes you can do nothing wrong, and it's, you know, it just depends on. I had an article that I wrote one version of it and it didn't do well, like made $17, and then I scrapped it and then I started again. It's a lot of it is the same kind of ideas, but it's written differently. And that just like took off and made like $14,000, $1,400. And so $1,400. And so it was like, you know, from $17 but it's really kind of the same story, you know, it's the same writing, it's the same quality. But you just never know, it's luck. So I think it's important to remember that, to not fixate on that. I think we had a question, how do you know to shortlist specific thoughts for a piece? Um, I think that in this regard, it sometimes that you have a very strong idea you want to put through, and you know you kind of write it and it feels right to you. But actually, having a writers community is super helpful. I think I have a few really close writing friends, and in the beginning, when you start off in Medium, maybe you don't have them yet. But don't worry, they'll happen. People will reach out to you. You can reach out to people like Anangsha, and I made friends through Medium as well. And some people, and then I will send it out to them and say, hey, what do you think? Help me. And if you are a writer, I encourage you to reach out to me. I would love to hear from you. And we all want to give back to like newer writers, or like I'm pretty new myself, but I think I've just been lucky to have success. But everyone is most like happy to give you ideas on, you know, if you put in effort, we want to help you. So yeah, I think the community has been a big part of that. I think, what do you think, Anangsha?
Yeah, it's very true. I mean, I owe a lot of my improvement to my writing buddies because when other people look at your work in that mind and analyze the minute mistakes you make, You
Mhm.
learn what not to repeat in the next articles. And when you edit somebody else's piece, you also learn a lot how, what not to do and what to do, how to make it more engaging. I think editing each other's work helps a lot.
Yeah, I agree. That's definitely true as well. Like then you realize what, and I think as you keep writing, I think you will also learn what feels like right and what doesn't. And you also get a lot of feedback. And that's the great thing about Medium is you get a lot of feedback from what people highlight, you know, which pieces do people read all the way through and which pieces people read like half or like you get like a 30% read rate or something. So then you get a lot of data as well for yourself, which helps you to shortlist. I've heard this piece of advice that you should take your most quoted line and turn it into an article. And I think that's something, I mean, I've never done that, but I borrow, like, I think of, I use that as ideation as well. So I use that as like, oh, that could be an idea for an article to write something else to that. So, and that's already a specific thought that, you know, a lot of people have highlighted. So you know that they want to read it or you know that something in there is catching their attention. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but Jasmine, but hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, it's definitely helpful for me at least because I have heard of this before that take your most highlighted line and make it a title, but I haven't tried it. But I think I should because it sounds like a very good idea because you know that's what people want to read from
Mhm.
you.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I mean, I think it shows that there is the specific combination of words draws someone's interest. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like, what would you say is the anatomy of your most highest earning piece on Medium? The highest
Ah,
earning piece. How does it look like?
my most viewed piece and my highest earning piece are two different pieces, actually.
Because your most viewed piece is on Better Humans, right?
Yeah, they paid me the 500 and that was it. I
Yeah.
was today. I'm just like, but they didn't have the model before on Better Humans, but they are actually follow a pretty similar anatomy, so it's easy to talk about it. So the first part is with the intro, it is drawing in the reader in a way that is either a story that you're like, oh, I know someone like that, you know, or that's me, you know, like, and that's really what you want the reader to feel when they first read the intro. It's like, oh, that's me. I'm interested. What can I, you know, how can I be involved? So one was done with the story, and the other one was done with a question. So it was a question to the reader, and I do that often. I experiment with this style of questioning the reader and saying, "Hey, when was the last time you know, did this or something, you know," and or I take them onto a journey. Like, let's say you're in a bar and you're trying to pick up a girl, like, you know, and then you see this girl and she says this, what do you do? You know, so it's like kind of like a bringing in the reader. So I think some level of emotional engagement from the reader in the intro, where you're like, ah, okay, interesting. And then the medium and then the structure of it should be very clear. So both these articles have really clear kind of like what we talked about, the breakdown of the takeaway. Step one, do this. Step two, do this. Step three, or like if it's traits, it's like trait number one is this. And then in the body itself, I tried to put little bits of research in there because it does add credibility. There's something that I can, and I love research myself. I love what scientists have done these crazy experiments and they're interesting. You know, I don't know that that's necessary, but that's been in most of my successful articles. There is some level of research, little minimal ones, little bits and sort of interspersed. Um, and in expanding on the points, I really rarely make an opinion, but I usually just tell a story when I expand. Like, you know, if I want to tell you that to talk to strangers, you need to go into non-emotional, non-factual questions. So ask emotional questions instead of staying it just like that, which I may at the end of the paragraph, I might tell you a story. I'd be like, okay, well, for example, if you ask somebody, what do you do for work? You know, they're off on their own automatic rail and you can't get any emotional connection, you know. So it's better to say, what are you passionate about? But I write the situation as opposed to a fact. So and then I conclude it very strongly. And then I give the fact that I'm like, okay, so the point of that is that you must ask emotional instead of factual questions, for example. So, And then I always do like a takeaway. And in the takeaway, again, is with the intro, you try to make the reader feel something because what they leave with is the most important part. And typically, what I try to do is something uplifting. So, a promise of mine that I had in Why You Should Follow Me is that I promise not to use your fears and anxieties against you, but like to remind you of the beauty and the humanity that exists in this world. So that's what I try to do. Like it's very hopeful at the end. It's like, this is what you can expect to feel. And this is why you should do it. And just remember these wonderful things about life, something like that. And then I end with a quote. So strong, appropriate quotes are pretty good. So that's kind of like been the formula for both of those that were the most successful.
In your about me, you also wrote this that you always read before going to bed and first thing in the morning, right? So I think all those reading that you have done in so many years must have helped you, gather all these quotes and also all these ideas, right? Because
Yeah, I'm like a walking quote machine in my I always, like you said, like I always know the quote, and then I have to go and look for the specific wording. Like, but I know what the quote is about. I just have to make sure I get it exactly right.
it's the same with me. I just remember a few words and just Google the words and the name of the author if I
Yeah,
remember that, or the
yeah,
name of the book. And somehow it's sometimes it's hard, this, reverse searching, but
yeah,
usually it
exactly.
works.
Yeah, Google's such a blessing. I don't know how writers did it before Google, but yeah, so like did a lot of Googling. But I think it is, for it is good as a writer to have these to grow your mind that way. It's like if you think of your writing mind as a muscle, reading is part of growing that. Writing is part of that too, but reading helps to put like good information. It's like feeding your mind with like vegetables, like healthy things that go into it that help you think, and be curious and enjoy it still. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, you also talked about building a relationship with the publication owners and editors. So any tips on how one can go about doing that?
So my way of doing that is I do those interviews that you've read. So
Mhm.
chat and I do them mostly after I have actually submitted to the publication. Um, so I think it's really helpful to use personal notes, the private notes in Medium for your editors. So for example, if you submit an article and you have multiple headline ideas that you want to put in there, you can actually put in
I
there.
I have done that actually.
Yeah, and you can actually also say, be thankful. And especially when they ask for editing, you should always thank them. So you, oh, I'm reading. Someone just one just popped up. So let's read this and see what he says. Community happens after you edit. Um, ah, he just said yes. Reach out for help, but yeah, we'll talk about that. Yeah, there's a little bit of a back and forth, but if you write more regularly, you will have a bunch of articles, and they'll all be at different phases. So you'll have the opportunity both to edit and to reach out to the community, etc., and all of that kind of stuff. So, and I think you can actually always shortlist an idea in your mind, and then before writing it, you could still ask for an opinion. Like I
Yeah.
feel I had an idea for an article, I could still ask Anangsha without having written the first draft. But yes, back to the editors. I think, I think leaving private notes and making really strong use of the private notes is good. I would say try not to be too aggressive in the beginning. Submit a few articles, get accepted, be very polite, always thank them for the opportunity to edit. But after a few articles you've submitted, if there's something interesting about them, you can reach out to them personally. A lot of them have Twitter or private emails, and you can start engaging that way. The other thing I would say is if they are writers themselves, you should follow them and read their work and engage with their work and give comments, and they'll notice that if you do that. So that's another way to really build that relationship, is to also appreciate them as writers, and go support their work, I think.
Yeah, that's very valuable advice. Yeah.
Right? How do people reach out to you?
Um, like what you said, most of times it's through private notes. Sometimes it's through Twitter or LinkedIn because I
Mhm.
have Twitter linked on my profile. So
And most
many
of the
people,
editors do, yeah.
yeah, many people have reached out on Instagram also that Hi, I'm a writer for a publication. Would you give feedback on this? And I
Yeah.
usually, whenever someone reaches out for feedback, I don't say no unless that person is really rude or,
Yeah.
sometimes people are very impolite. But if that's not the case, I mostly say yes because I think being an editor also is a great opportunity to connect with so many new writers on the
Yeah.
platform.
Absolutely.
Thankful for this every day, actually, like every new email or message I get.
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
there are so many people in this world, but they chose to reach out to me. So I
Yeah. I
should
think.
be.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think when people reach out, it's like, hey, I like your work, I respect your work, so your opinion matters to me, and that's just so beautiful. Especially when readers reach out to me, it's just amazing. And people are like, you made my day. Yesterday, I had a mother. She had 8 children under the age of 14, and she's like, I'm having a mental breakdown day, and I read one of your articles, and it was like the spiritual hug that I needed. And I'm like, wow, that's like but yeah, if you guys are new, whoever's listening, if you're a new reader, I think most of the time other writers are also very happy to give you ideas and help you if you're willing to work on yourself. The most common feedback I hear from editors when people reach out to them is that the person feels very entitled. So your approach in how you reach out is super important. Say, be appreciative of their time. Everyone is doing this for free. And that they have other day jobs as well. So don't say urgent, important. Hey, I need you to do this for me. Nobody wants that. To say, hey, I really like your writing. I appreciate your work. Um, it would mean a lot to me if you blah, blah, blah. But just, ask the way you ask, very important. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's very true. And I think it's very important. You cannot argue with editors that I am
Yes.
right. You should always, like you said, be appreciative of the time and effort they spend in editing your article. If you don't agree, you can always go to some other publication.
Exactly.
Right?
You can tell them, you're like, thank you. Should always say thank you for taking it, because if they even bother to comment back, that's investment in you. That's saying like, I think your piece is worthy of my time to even comment back to you. It's like, otherwise they get thousands a day and they can just ignore you. So anytime somebody, and if you disagree, it's really not because your writing is bad, or sometimes you get edited in a way that you think is worse than what it was before. But it's because they know their audience super well. So they know what works for their audience, and they're trying to make that. And like you said, if you don't agree, then thank them and take it somewhere else, and that's fine. Yeah.
That's very valuable advice. So, May, what are your goals as a writer for this year, and say eventually, where do you see yourself as a writer?
I think, this is like such a timely question, because I spent so much time thinking about it when I was starting up my newsletter, because I didn't want to, I feel like a newsletter is so intrusive, it's like in your inbox, so personal.
Yeah,
And I wanted to get a lot of clarity around what it is that I'm trying to achieve as a writer. And so this is it, I think. I want to build a community of people. Um, so through my writing, that engage with this community through my writing, that want to learn how to connect more authentically and more meaningfully with people that they meet, or just to build better connections in their lives. Um, and yeah, and I hope that eventually what will happen is I will have, all my readers that are all interested in connection, that are all, interested in more meaningful connections, will have this community online that they can interact with each other, or they can just simply learn from my writing to be better at connection. So I think the focus will come down to creating that connection. So that's my hope for now, and beyond. I'm not sure. I don't know. I think sometimes when we start writing, we don't know the opportunities that are available to us.
yeah,
As we write, we meet other people, and they go, "What do you think about this?" And you're like, "Oh, okay." So I try not to have too many like uh, goals that are super rigid. Where it's like, "Oh, I want this. This must happen by here, by here, by here." I kind of have this. Okay, this is what I want to create, and here's the time frame for like a year or whatever. But I also want to have a space and openness for future things to occur. Yeah, so for now, it's that community. If I can build that community through my writing, I think that would be Awesome.
That's so great. And I think I'm trying to do something similar to
Yeah.
have community of people who are interested in reading my work and how I can help them become better. So I think it was a very great and very insightful discussion that we had just now. So is there any question that you wished I would have asked you or anything specific you want to talk about?
Is there a question that I wish what? You cut out.
You wish I asked you.
Oh, that's such a good question. Um, I have all these questions. I feel like I should interview you. I want to ask you all the same questions.
We can
I
do that
would,
some other time maybe.
yeah, I mean, I think what would be good to know would be what do readers feel more that they need more of. There's a lot of medium writers out there. There's a lot of, but if you really wanted to connect with the writer, what would you like to see? Like, what is it that would really be meaningful as a reader to say this specific writer is making a huge difference in my life, when I read their work. So that would be something that would be good to know. And that's a very broad question, so hard to answer, but yeah. I will ask you that again, and I show it another time when we talk and you've had time to think about
Sure, definitely. So, thank you so much, May. This was such a valuable discussion. I actually learned a lot. I'm also inspired to, write emotional introductions from what you said. I'm sure,
it. Yeah.
I'm sure it was valuable for everyone else too who's watching. So, thank you
Yeah,
so
and
much.
I would say to everyone that's watching as well, like if you guys want to reach out, I think, and I'm sure we'll put all the links out there, but if you want to be part of this community, I'd love to have you. So
Yeah, I'll leave the links to May's Medium, her Twitter, her email list in the description of this video. So, you can always reach out.
and thank you for those who asked questions. It's really nice when we're talking. It's like I love talking to Anangsha, but it's nice to know somebody's listening. It's like
So, thank you so much, May, and
no,
thank you,
thank
everyone,
you for having me.
for listening. It was a great talk.
All right. Well, I will chat with you soon outside of
Yeah,
this. Yes.
definitely.
Very excited to hear about your recent developments. All
Thank you so much. So, see you again soon.
right.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.